Hi everyone, welcome to Battling Irons. Got Sloth and myself today. Sloth, we've seen the winter window as it is close, and we are now about to embark on the rest of the season with the team that has been assembled. There's a tagline that's been put out a lot throughout the whole time by Nuno himself about rebalancing the squad, and we're going to kind of get into that in more detail. But before we get into the nitty gritty of the players that left and the players that have come in, what is your kind of general feel of the window? And again, we'll get into the kind of the players and positions and whether we've actually managed to rebalance or whether we've undersold and undercooked the team once again.
I mean, do you want me to go controversial with my opinion of this? I don't know. It's
Mate, go all out.
I feel like when you said we're assembling a team, it feels like all those face swap videos and stuff, all those deep fake videos where it's like we're assembling a team and it's like Jeffrey Epstein and then all the worst people imaginable, and that's David Sullivan's level. And like it's that sort of terrible running of the club that we never seem to get away from. We're constantly linked with loan sharks, and that's the reason that we're posting a profit or trying to post a profit, is because we're looking at loan sharks and we're looking at how good the finances look, as opposed to actually, you know what, we can balance those things. They're incredibly important. We can make sure the club is in a good financial state, but we can actually do that while recruiting talent and while, pushing the team forward. It's incredibly difficult. I'm not making out that it's easy, but let me tell you something. If David Sullivan thinks that he is anyway the best person, this is what we were told in the months leading up to this window. He's the best person for this window. If he's the best person to run a football club, Jeffrey Epstein is the best person to run a party and a holiday island.
Well,
Let's face
the
it.
best person to run a kids
Yeah,
kids centre.
it's
Nah, man.
disastrous, and
No,
there's no other way to put it, because it we constantly hear, oh, the manager's backed. Well, we know that Nuno had a list drawn up. We know that Maximilian Hahn had a list drawn up as well, and these are both people with fairly decent records. When it comes to signing a centre back, Nuno wanted Milenkovic. Forest was very vocal about that, and great signing he turned out to be for them. I know he was linked with us, but they actually made the move. Now, Maximilian Hahn as well, you look at Diouf, you look at Magasso and Fernandez, and yeah, Magasso's not exactly set the world alight, but Fernandez and Diouf have been very good. So you look at those people who've gone, yeah, actually, you know what, we've kind of proven ourselves, we've got a track record. And then David Sullivan's track record is just absolutely atrocious. Yeah, it's awful, and I don't know quite. I don't know quite how to put it in terms of football, just how terribly run we are, but nobody comes close, because I think we saw a really good point made about Wolves recruitment in this window, where they know they're down, and I don't mean that as any disrespect to Wolverhampton. They know they're down, so they're recruiting smartly, and they've sold players at great value to make sure that they soften the blow, but they're building for next season and trying to improve the squad already so that they come straight back up. We're in this sort of very typical Sullivan position, where we're not improving the squad, we're not doing anything, we're not preparing for relegation and looking to rebuild from there. But at the same time, we're not actually competing to try and get away from the relegation spots. We're kind of doing the bare minimum. And if we're looking for anything, we're probably hoping that someone collapses around us. And I think that's probably the best that this window can hope for, to be honest. And I don't want to sound like I'm just disrespecting the players, because I'm not. I do like some of the recruitment, But again, the idea that you can just sit back after 2 signings in a sort of forward position and then go, yeah, I don't, I don't know what else we can do when you're constantly conceding goals and not keeping clean sheets is just baffling to me.
No, exactly. And I think that point's very valid. And when you look at what we've done from a first team perspective, yes, there were other players that were allowed to go out on loan, such as George Urphy, such as Callum Marshall, which obviously not part of this list. But when you look at the outbounds, Barn, Gilham, I have zero issue with the players that have been allowed to leave. Gilham has never really been given a chance, but for his own career, leaving West Ham was a good thing for him. But then when you look at what we've done, it makes perfect sense. I'm fully on board with those players going. However, the main caveat to that was what Nuno was saying, such as we needed to rebalance, we needed to add balance to our side. And then you look at our inbounds, obviously we have Tati, we have Pablo, so we brought in 2 strikers. Traore came in as a winger, we brought in Diassi as one of our centre-backs. But then the important point is rebalance and adding balance. And when you look, to the team on the right-hand side, have we truly rebalanced when you consider of a 25-man squad that we are able to register? We're only able to register, or we only have 21 first-team players. And, if we was to look at the window, when we're talking about balancing, let's start from the front, right? And then work our way back, because we said in the summer, going into the season with 2 strikers, and those 2 strikers in particular being Callum Wilson and Fulkrug, was foolhardy because you can't rely on either to remain fit. Now, if we take, and I'm going to keep saying it, rebalancing throughout this, but when you look at what we did in the front kind of position, you can argue that was a job tick. We ticked that one off. We did decent recruitment. Yes, Hattie isn't known to being a goal scorer, but he's very much a West Ham centre forward in that we tend to really enjoy and we really seem to ingratiate ourselves to strikers who work incredibly hard and do a lot of work off the ball
and don't score goals.
You don't score goals. Yeah, seems to be our type of player. It's very rare we do get a scorer. And then look at Felipe, who is, in the last year or 2 has actually shown in Portugal that he can bring a goal about him. Obviously, some criticisms would be, well, look at Gorka, as he did that for 2 years in Portugal, and he's not really pulling up trees at Arsenal. But I think there are some other caveats to that for him. But again, when we talk about adding balance, we needed bodies in that position, and we brought in 2 players who fundamentally in the short term have actually had a really positive impact and actually given us balance in the terms of being able to press efficiently and properly out of possession. And we've been so passive in the last 2 years, if not longer, really, in that kind of forward press. And it's been quite refreshing to see them 2 playing and performing to a level where they are like little bulldogs, the pair of them, constantly trying. Yes, there are some deficiencies in possession and maybe front of goal, but some of that will come with more games. But do you feel that is, at least when we look at this window, an area where we actually have addressed imbalance and brought in the right types of players?
To a degree. Again, I think Alan Wilson's a really frustrating one for me because I do think he's a fantastic finisher, really good movement. However, again, you can't rely on him. So what are you doing in terms of you've recruited 2 strikers or 2 forwards, and one of them who doesn't really score goals and the other who's very inexperienced? Now, I really like both players individually to a degree. I think Pablo is the sort of striker that would really work under Nuno and works well again from a pressing point of view. But there are things that I just don't really understand in terms of Tati's recruitment. I like his work ethic. I like a lot of his ability on the ball. But again, unless you're sort of playing a totally different system, which requires a bit more depth and requires, more players who can cover, say, out on the left, which again we've totally neglected. And you said about how we're finally sort of pressing as a unit. I think it's really important to also remember that in previous seasons we have had Antonio and Bowen leading the press, which has worked, but that left side has always let us down. And this is something again we saw earlier in the season, and particularly last season when Somerville was injured. That left side goes, and we have no one to replace of any quality in there, then the whole team suffers. And we could maybe move Tatty out there, but then you're changing the system, and you're probably going to go 4-4-2, and you're playing Wilson, and then what happens at the 60th minute when Wilson's blowing out his backside? It's again a complete failing to build, but kind of going, look at these new guys, aren't they good and aren't they trying hard? Well, yeah, but what happens if the wheels fall off? And look, I don't like to be a pessimist, but the reality is this is West Ham United.
Well, I think that's also this season leads us to have that level of pessimism, right? It's not been great, and I don't think I've seen a season for us where we are punished so harshly for not taking opportunities or for mistakes. I've seen us in previous years. Yes, we'll make mistakes and we tended to get punished for them. But this season feels like it doesn't even need to be a full mistake from someone. We are going to get punished. And if there's something that can go wrong for us in a game, it certainly has. We haven't necessarily made our own luck at all.
Well, even you look at the Brighton game where, we had a rotten bit of luck go against us and Brighton equalised. We had a header right at the end, which could have won it. And again, it's just terrible bit of finishing to miss. And it's things like that, again, where they add up over the course of a season. And I kind of, when I first started to pay attention to football, I was only a kid when we got relegated on 42 points. But I do remember going back to it and I've watched all the games back since and stuff. But I remember when things went our way, the teams around us won. And again, that's kind of what's happening now. And when I look at the recruitment and I think, right, this is a side that needs a bit of spark, a bit of fight, but also someone who can do a bit more than just get the crowd up off their feet at times. They can lead and really pick the others up around them. I think you've still not addressed that major issue. And look, we do have a number of players who lead by example, and this is something that I think is really important to kind of talk about with Bowen's captaincy, is that he's not a player who is ever shouting at his teammates and calling them to calling for more and calling by the scruff of their neck and really trying to get them fired up. He's someone who leads by example and who puts in the performances and expects that from others around him. We don't have anyone in the squad who does that. Even Souček, very popular figure, captain of the Czech team. He may well get everyone buoyed up, but again, he's not gonna grab someone by the scruff of the neck. Or
it's not necessarily more visible on the pitch in terms of him being vocal. Like you would always see Ogbonna being very vocal. Zuma was very vocal on the pitch. We don't seem to have those players who have that very strong voice or willing to project in that respect. We have players that are showing via their actions on the pitch. Fernandez, I think Pablo and Tati have shown, again, that they're trying to lead that line and trying to lead the team forward, to push up, to stand higher, to be more intense with that pressing. Obviously, Bowen, Somerville also is a player. I think many players have actually started to step to the plate because there has been some improvement, which has added some balance in terms of our off the ball, because we have been very passive, and to add some level of intensity. But as you say, when you go past that front line, which has addressed a good number of issues, we removed Gilhelm in terms of we sold Gilhelm, and we then brought in Traore, who we then spent pretty much the entire window chasing. And granted, Fulham were being, yes, a bit difficult because they didn't want to allow him to go until African Cup of Nations finished, and they also then went and brought in Oscar Bob. And then we bought him in then for £2 million. But again, it's that, as you rightly said, where is the balance in the sense of we needed at least two wingers, and the winger we did bring in is essentially on a 6-month loan. We brought a young lad in from Venezuela who could end up being a good player for us next year in the Championship or in the Premier League, depending on where we are. But again, we bought a player effectively on a 6-month loan to be part of the under-21 team. So there may be some arguments from some who go, well, we brought in two wingers. Well, we've addressed that. But one of them has also been said that he's not fully fit yet, not ready to play. And we don't know if he's going to be someone to figure in the first team at this part of the year. And as you say, if Somerville gets injured, okay, then we have to go, right, Traore, you need to go on that left-hand side. And what happens if Bowen needs to come off like he did in the game against Chelsea? You then have to go, okay, what square peg can I put in on the left-hand side? Your option is either put Tati there and ask for Wilson to go up front with Pablo, or you're going, right, Juff, I need you to play left wing, and I'm now going to bring in Ollie Scholes. So to harp on to Nuno's point, we needed to rebalance. And that's not a position we brought in balance. We brought in at least someone who Nuno trusts, who we can play more in Traore. However, that left-hand side is still weak, because if one of those gets injured, or God forbid, both get injured, we have one natural winger, and then we're looking around the squad, pretty much like John Travolta in Pulp Fiction, just going,
Yeah, it's always been under Sullivan a small squad and a massive drop off from the first team, and I think that if look, I don't want to sound extreme, but I do, in my personal opinion, if we get an injury to Somerville or Bowen, season's over. Season's completely over. And maybe if you stacked the midfield and you said, right, we're going to go ultra defensive and go 4-5-1, and we're just going to have one forward, and try and rotate between Pablo and Tati or something like that, and you stick on your big lumps, you put Souček, Magassa, and Fernandez buzzes around them in the midfield. Maybe there would be some sort of hope, but I just think this is incredibly irresponsible, and it's not even just a disrespect to the fans. It's a disrespect to the people who work at the football club and put their time in. And like I mentioned, just basically ignoring Nuno's targets, Maximilian Hahn's targets, and just basically going, oh, well, I'm going to go and sign this kid from Venezuela.
Yeah.
What are you doing? I don't work on a Sunday, so the fax machine's off. We've just conceded 3 goals against Chelsea and probably blown one of the best chances of really getting a result that's going to pick people up in the same way that the Tottenham game did.
And, if we'd have won that game, the buoyancy we'd have had first time in ages. I know one was a cup game, but 4 wins in a row.
Yeah.
3 of them in the Premier League, and to have beaten Chelsea would have buoyed the team so much and would have been a psychological thing for the rest of them above us to go, oh, they're really actually quite in form now. We can't miss a beat. But to have done what we did, and when we did the review, we mentioned the potential thought process in Nuno's head was he turned to his bench and went, I have 2 young lads who I don't know I can really trust in this high pressure and high kind of pressure moment against 2 over £100 million midfielders. And essentially, if he ever gets sold, definitely over £100 million in Palmer midfield. I don't know if I can put in Magassa or Potts into that situation, but I know one guy that I know and maybe trusted previously that I can maybe put in here. The wrong call, absolutely the wrong call. But it's the fact that he has to look at his bench and he clearly goes, I don't know if I can completely commit to these young lads in these really intense, high pressure cooker moments.
I think it's more the fact that the window was open and we didn't sign anyone, as opposed to Nuno trusting the wrong person. Because let's face it, if he had a centre back on that bench, whether they're fully match fit or not, he probably chooses them over Kilman. And look, again, I don't think that Kilman was to blame for the collapse. Personally, I don't. And I think if you took your Max Kilman hating cap off and watched all those goals, I think you'd be pretty hard pressed to blame him.
And he did pretty well on the second goal, where he obviously headed it onto the bar.
But the bigger point is that
so fast.
I think if we'd signed a centre back January 1st, January 2nd, and said, right, I'm not saying you have to spend £26 million on Charlie Cresswell. I'm not saying that for a second. But if you have a deal lined up, whether it was, say, like someone like Etienne Kakoué or something like that, I don't know. Just plucking names out of a hat that maybe Nuno might trust. But if you have a centre-back walk in first or second day of the transfer window, do you think we get pumped by Wolves in the same way that we did? Do you think we get, the same hemorrhaging of goals and leaking of goals that we have had, even in our wins, when we've conceded goals?
Yeah.
I don't think you do. And it's that total incompetence or even attempt to put a band-aid over the problem, the wound, because that's what it is. It's a wound in our defence. That is just kind of completely self-destructive.
Yeah. I think the problem is we saw the grandstanding gesture early in the window. We got 2 players in. We spent around about 40 odd million pounds on the pair of them, nearly 50 million pounds, combined really. And then everything ground to a halt, and it was all about getting players out. Again, we have a club that can only seem to work one deal at a time. Fortunately, Pablo came in very quickly, but again, that's because we lent on Mendes and his relationship with Nuno, and Nuno's like, I need a striker, you go find me one. Same with Tati. That same kind of situation is, we brought those 2 in, and it's a grandstand moment, and we were all surprised as fans, like, wow, a couple of days into the window, we've already got 2 players in. This is brilliant. And it actually made everyone go, well, maybe we are going to attack this window properly. But instead, we then spent the rest of the time messing around on the sale of Paqueta. Now, what I will commend them on is then getting the absolute maximum value out of that sale. And they were right into what they got, but it took too long to make the deal, making ridiculous, requests such as, we want him back on loan. Now, that should only be one conversation. Should be a point of when they come in and they go, well, we want 60 million. And they go, no, you're not going to get 60. We'll offer you 30. Then you go, no, well, if you're going to offer me 30 and I want 60, okay, I want 40 and then back for the rest of the 6 months. Like, it becomes that flippant point of then they go, okay, look, we're not going to do that, are we? Okay, then, right, well, it's 40 million. No loan, 40 million. But we kept harping on about this loan thing, which just dragged it out rather than just going, look, line in the sand, 40 million, let's do it. You put 40 million on the table, he is yours, done. We could have moved on. But instead, we just waited around. The on-off again with Rodriguez. 1 minute he was gone, the next he wasn't. Then he was gone. Then we waited a week, and then he actually was gone. James Ward-Prowse, apparently he was staying, might have been staying, got put on the bench, and then gone within the next few days to Burnley. Now, again, I don't think those players should have stayed at West Ham, but you can't just allow them to go and not look at any replacements.
I think as well, what really annoys me is like this idea that you can't get players in before you sell, and because it's such a double-edged sword. It's always an excuse with David Sullivan. It's always, okay, well the players are really hard to sign. Okay, and it's your job. You're apparently the best man for it. But then again, it's we've sold Lucas Paqueta, so we have a budget. Yeah, but now teams know you have £30 million and
Yeah.
you have that money to go out and spend, and they're gonna jack up the prices for you. If you go out and you start negotiating even before the window, or you go into the window while you're talking about selling these Paqueta, then you recruit and you can build a budget, make a deal, and then sell him. Like, you cover your losses, or you plan with that money. Instead, we just react. We're so poorly run, and there's such little foresight or ambition that we're just kind of
I would say
constantly
it's the ambition
in.
is what it
Yeah,
gets me, because I look at it and it's as though the drive of the price was purely to get as close as they can to covering not only the amount we put for Tati, but also what we put in for Pablo. And then obviously we had what we had in with Gilhem. And then you look at that, and then when you look at then what we spent, and then you actually realise we made a £1 million. And again, this is very conservative fee, 1 million profit. Now, I haven't got any issue with profit because we consistently lose money every season. We consistently sell players under value. So making a profit's not a bad thing. At some point, we have to make profits on players. However, when you have a manager constantly saying we need to add balance and rebalance the squad, turning a profit and then looking around at the squad and going, right, well, centre forward, that's had balance. Wing, okay, I've added one player. I'm still unbalanced there because I don't have a left side. Then I'm looking at the midfield and going, okay, I've just shipped out 4 centre midfielders, one of them being more of an attacking flair player. But I'm just going to go, you know what? I'm not going to bring anyone in because we're playing a double pivot at the moment and you've got 4 players in there. Also, you've got this young lad Kante in the youth team that might be useful. Now, granted, give youth players a go, but I will often say you give those youth players a go when your first team players are not performing. If you're in a January window and you have the opportunity to go get a first team ready player, remember, we're talking about the players that we sold were technically first team players and players in the first team. One of them being Paqueta was a bona fide starter. I know the others weren't. They were squad players. So you can argue, yes, Kante can replace a squad player. However, you're selling a bona fide starter and not bringing anyone in, then all of a sudden we are now going staring down, the barrel going, well, we can't afford Fernandez to pick up an injury. We certainly can't afford him to be out for a long period. And then again, Souček, at the moment, he's come in, has been really good. We can't afford him to be out either. Because if we do, then we're relying on Magassa, who's probably his best performance was against Man United, where he's more of a box-to-box player than a defensive midfielder. And again, we're back to Freddie Potts, who, whilst hasn't disgraced himself, hasn't been particularly bad, he needs to take more responsibility on the ball and push more with the ball to kind of, again, to push his level up. But again, there is the balance there. There's no safety net because we have 4 players, and only 2 of them have prolonged experience as first team football players.
I think as well, it's important to say that with Paqueta, let's not pretend that he was only ever playing as a 10. Yeah. We had shoehorning him out to the wing. We had him playing as this sort of false 9, and then we're going, we're only going to bring in a couple of players. It's not good enough. If you're using him as this utility man, then you need to actually address that depth and really make sure that you're recruiting and bringing in a quality option that can do those roles, not just, I'm going to bring in Adama Traore, who, again, I quite like, but
we spent 3 weeks chasing him.
Yeah, that's exactly.
Why are you not diverting elsewhere? I know Nuno wanted him, Nuno liked him, but if you were under the impression you could get him for 2 million later on, there is no reason why you couldn't have got someone else. But it felt like to me, the moment there was a realization of we can turn a profit in this window, and also turn a profit in terms of we potentially add another 10 to 11 million as well at the end of the season as well, by bringing with Fulkirk, if he can convince Milan to purchase him, turning £15 million in this window when your manager has consistently said every press kind of junket, we need to rebalance. We need to rebalance. And you look at it, centre forward position, yes. Wing positions, no. Midfield, you are playing a dangerous game with two inexperienced midfielders alongside two maybe more experienced. But again, even Fernandez is inexperienced, he's only 21. You're asking those two not to get injured because now they are extremely pivotal to what we do. Then we get back to, well, essentially, we were chasing a goalkeeper the entire window. Did we get one? No, we didn't. We was also looking at a lone goalkeeper, looking to ship out. First, we were looking to sell Hermansen. Then we were looking to loan him. It's just a complete indecision and madness. I don't believe some of the stuff that comes out of the club with, oh, Nuno didn't have a list. How can we have 15 years of managers not having lists before we get in the transfer window? We discussed this on Hammer's chat. That every single year, there's this conversation, whether it's summer, whether it's winter window, the manager hasn't defined his list. No way, shape or form is that the case. And also, if you know that happens every year, as chairman, as the de facto director of football, why are you not turning around to that manager going, right, every single year, I'm sick of this happens. We get into a window, I don't have your top priorities, I don't have a list of players, that is not happening this window. I want your top players in by the start of December, and we can start those conversations. If you are incapable as a leader of the club, director of football, to have that conversation and to turn around and target them and say that this is how it needs to be, you're incompetent, bordering on negligent. And quite frankly, that is Sullivan in a nutshell. How you can get to January the 1st and not have hard and fast, these are the centre-backs we got, this is your list of priorities and we will work through. And I will continue to try and get your top priority, but these are the backups. And I'm going to work on these backups as well. And if one of these comes up first, this one looks like it's not happening, due to the state of our squad, we are going to have to make a decision together. And we're likely going to have to make a compromise because we are shipping goals in. We can't defend set pieces and we need some assurances. But we spent the entire window bought in two players and then we dicked around for 3 weeks until we got in Traore for £2 million. Now, I give some pushback on that in the sense of how Fulham, rightly, didn't want to sell. That said, it frustrates me because we could have done far more and far better. And, we spent the entire day chasing around Disasi, who was not convinced about joining. We spent the whole day chasing him and brought him in. Fair enough. He's going to resolve a problem for us in that he's a defender and better than what we have. But again, why was the defender? Never mind, we know it was a problem, not resolved. Goalkeeper, if that was such a big problem, why did we not sort it? It's just the window is just an absolute cluster, and it's all driven by one man who.
No, I completely agree, and I think that's a good place to. I think that's a good place to wrap it up. And we look forward to I look forward to reading through some of the comments and seeing what people think. Right.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's been a frustrating window. We Sloth's at the drop as well. But yeah, it's been a frustrating window. We are gambling with relegation, and to sell as many players or to remove as many players from our first team squad as we did and only bringing 4 players is a massive worry. And should we get injuries in certain positions, we're almost gone. But yeah, it's where we are. It's not been a great window. We've got some players in, which is good. However, are they going to be the right players? And have we maybe gambled and gone on a kind of a short bet? And has the desire on which to turn a profit and not to spend really going to come back to haunt us? At the moment, I think, yes, it is. If we don't get anything out of the Burnley game, the Burnley game is not a win, quite frankly, we are down, but we need to beat Burnley. The players we brought in are going to have to perform to a level that the rest of the squad for majority of the season haven't done. And Sassi's got a really big kind of role potentially in us staying up, because can't trust Mavropanos to keep his head in it. We can't trust Kilman at the moment. Hopefully, by having Todibo, Disassi, and Areola having 3 French speakers means that communication could be a lot stronger. Disassi was once the captain of Monaco. He was a very solid defender for Monaco. It's kind of ruined a bit when he's gone to Chelsea, but we'll have to hope that he's coming motivated in which to, play games and to be strong. But yeah, it's tricky at the moment for us. I think we are within touching distance of staying up. We are 5 points behind. We probably need 5 or 6 wins between now and the end of the season to have that chance of staying up. And there are opportunities for us to do so, but it's also the fear that we get an injury to one of those wingers, to one more centre-back, to one of those centre midfielders, then the gamble from Sullivan to basically do it on the cheap could come back to bite us. But thanks everyone who has dropped a message. Sorry we couldn't get through them all and put them all up today, but let us know your thoughts. We will respond. It's not the most positive window. We have to still hope that we can get through the season and pick up results. The recent results have been a lot better, and we did play great for 60 minutes against Chelsea. If we can blow teams away in 60 minutes and then hold out for the rest of the season, which is possible, we showed against even Sunderland, blew away in 45 minutes, and the next 45 minutes was almost irrelevant in how we played. If we can do that consistently between now and the end of the year, we'll most likely win more than we lose. But probably 6 wins is what we're going to need minimum to stay up. That's quite a tall order considering the place we're in. However, if all these far players are all pulling in the right direction, we do have the quality to stay up. It's just whether we can keep positivity when we do hit those bumps. And again, I think the crowd, definitely in the home games now, the realization of how desperate it is, will be up for games, and that will help the players as well. But again, they also need to give us something when they do play. But thanks everyone for watching. Yes, it's not been a positive window. Been a bit of a shit show, to be honest, but we live to fight another day, and we hope we can stay up. If not, it's going to be a fire sale in the summer and a huge rebuilding, and don't trust David Sullivan to tie shoelace, let alone rebuild a squad in the Championship. But again, thanks very much, everyone, and until next time, come on, you Irons.